There appears to be a new world record now for the longest delayed game, and it's going to be this bad boy right here, Keen, or however you pronounce it. This is actually kind of interesting to read about, so we're getting into it. This is an article from The Guardian. I know. It's a different news source than like Kotaku and stuff, even though I originally found the article on Kotaku, so let's get into it. So, Keen, the most delayed video game in gaming history, releases after 22 years. The maker of the Italian action game has endured the longest development journey in history. Their game is now finally out on a long discontinued Game Boy Advance. Let me tell you, the Game Boy Advance, talking about handhelds, Game Boy Advance is like the Xbox 360 in my opinion. Like, it's probably creme de la creme. It's like the top of the handhelds. In 2002, a group of 5 Italians made local news when they were going to be the first company in the country to develop a game for Nintendo's popular portable, the Game Boy Advance. The pulled together in a few hundred euros and some computers to prepare for the project. It must be nice, like back in the day, to be able to just like pull together like a couple computers and call it good. They had no experience in making games. They didn't even have a programmer. All they had was a love for video games, a shared hatred of working for bosses, and endless optimism. Which, I mean, that right there, just that statement is what makes a lot of really great projects, whether it's movies, games, or whatever, great. Because they're passion projects. You know, that's always the best. For the next 2 years, the group worked away. Late nights were common, and the team barely took any time off. It was a grueling time, but they were determined to make an ambitious game with complex features. Its name was Keen. If you haven't heard of it, it's because it never came out until now. Which, I don't even remember even hearing about this being in development through, like, publications back in the day, such as, like, Game Informer or IGN, because I used to go on there and read about that kind of stuff, like potential games upcoming, and I never heard about it. The action platformer didn't see the light of day until this year, by which the time of the original team has long since moved on. Only one member of the group of 5 remained, game designer who never lost belief in the project. Keen holds the record for the most delayed video game in history. 22 years eclipsed the 15 years journey of Duke Nukem Forever. Which, I mean, Duke Nukem Forever was in development hell. And I think it switched companies like 3 or 4 times before it actually come out. A shooter that was delayed for so long that it became a meme. After all this time, people can now buy Keen on a Game Boy Advance cartridge. The game begins by asking the players to choose between its 2 protagonists, a warrior and a priestess. The warrior can use swords to kill enemies, and there are a lot of them. I died repeatedly in the first level, armor-clad, skull-bound, and revived after a short while. You can't let your guard down in Keen, which may be why likens it to a primordial Dark Souls. It reminisces on one of the oddball games you took a chance on as a kid, maybe because the artwork looked really rad, or maybe it was the only thing left on the shelves of your local movie rental place. Which, that I don't agree with, because I don't remember ever seeing Game Boy games at movie rental places. All I ever remember seeing is like the original Nintendo, Super Nintendo, N64, stuff like that, PlayStation, a lot of disc-based. But I don't ever remember seeing a Game Boy Advance game for rent. A multi-decade release schedule was never planned for, of course. The game had been finished years ago, and multiple publishers expressed interest in it. Having chosen one, the wind shifted after Keen's Show's publisher conducted some market analysis that determined the game was too risky to back. At the time, each Game Boy cartridge would cost $15 to produce. That's crazy to think about, that it costs $15 then to produce a Game Boy game. And it makes me think, like, okay, it costs $15 and then they ship it out and everything. And I think we were buying them for like $40 back in the day. It's just interesting. The amount of capital required just to print the initial copies was daunting, especially since the chance of commercial success were low based on industry trends at the time. Yeah, I mean, I do remember there was a lot of licensed games that were getting pushed, and of course, first party titles like Mario, Metroid, NES, like retro games. You didn't really see many out of the box like indie games such as this getting pushed for the Game Boy Advance, if that makes any amount of sense. Because like, I agree, it is risky, and it's just crazy to think. But despite the setback, he held on hope and attended the University of Tuscany, where he spent a year diving into archives of unpublished 15th century books. These were thrilling tales about mercenary companies in the early Italian Renaissance involving knights, soldiers, and squires. But due to their age, the stories were essentially lost to time. Keen is inspired by those tales, by the unusual graphic style of early Japanese games, and by the action games as Turrican. Despite its age, considered Keen to be a pioneer of sorts, akin to like Dark Souls. The non-linear fantasy game is unforgiving, but players are rewarded by a compelling story about lost civilization. And I mean, I, I, I'm trying to think of like any Game Boy game where it was like an amazing story, and I mean, there's not really like most of the stories on the Game Boy games were just standard tropes about heroes, villains, blah 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 blah. Because most of the time they're made for younger people. It languished in development limbo. The company Bellstein founded Age of Games had to find a way to survive. The capitalist system is a ruthless meat grinder, he says, to which I have to adapt out of necessity, but I don't like it. Which that ultimately that's what the gaming industry is coming to, and it sucks because a lot of people that want to take risks on games like this don't really do it because they're like, well, if I take the risk, I could potentially end up shutting down the company, right? And that's why we've kind of been stuck in this monotony of the same bullshit games. I have a buddy of mine that tells me all the time that it's my fault that, the gaming industry is going to shit because I like indie games. I like games whether they're 2D graphics, I don't care. As long as they have a great story and so on and so forth, like I'm going to play it. I don't care if, the graphics are 8K. I want a great story instead of the same copy paste, such as Call of Duty every year. The company found a niche in educational games. One of the biggest successes so far has been, I don't even know how to pronounce that, a platforming game developed for Italy's INAIL, a nonprofit group dedicated to helping people prevent injuries and diseases at work. It's been played by tens of thousands of students and has tackled topics such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Nice. Yeah, here, let's take a look at this. Like I said, the graphics are actually pretty good for a Game Boy Advance game. It's not too terribly crazy. I'm sure it is unforgiving. I kind of want to buy this game only because of like how long it's been in development. But I did price of the cartridge. Anyways, so yeah, for the most part, it's a very good looking game. Age of Games might have continued down its path perpetually, but a shift in the gaming industry suddenly made Klein a possibility again. Within the last 5 years, a boom of retro game scenes has revived the interest in aging hardware and rare games, which can be fetched thousands of dollars on the resale market. Not only have the cost of producing GBA cartridges gone down, companies have also risen to meet the demand. And I mean, one crazy thing is like years ago, this is something that's crazy. There's a licensed Halo game you could buy for the Atari 2600 that is basically Halo 1. I've been trying to get my hands on that, and I just, for whatever reason, I just can't find it anywhere. I believe we are in phases similar to the revival of vinyl cassettes for music. Return to previous, more primitive forms of the medium driven by nostalgia from the generations who lived those eras and curiosity by those who have come after such technology. It is funny because I do have a baby brother that's 10 years younger than me. And he swears up and down he knows all about like this, that, and the other thing. Oh, I know all about gaming. And then like I'll pull out an N64 or an Atari or whatever, and he's just like, "What's that? I don't understand what that is." Like, Klein's new publisher, Incubate, Incubate. That's actually it's kind of funny right there. Specializes in producing games for classic consoles, and it's backing Klein. Klein. I've pronounced it so many different ways. The game is now being sold in an eye-catching, translucent, gray cartridge. The game box comes with multi-page manual too, a pack in that's practically disappeared from the modern games, which is, in my opinion, it's a lost art form. Is game box art, and then on top of that, like it says, the game manual. Nowadays, you could just go online and look at game manuals, and I hate that. On a romantic level, the thought of releasing a game on its original console is simply magical. To see Kane come to life on the very platform it is designed for is a dream come true. After Age of Gaming is working on a spiritual successor, much like he did more than 20 years ago. He hopes that the public will see the value in games like Kine, and even if it doesn't have an advanced graphics or fancy bells and whistles. The power of the video game experience can, not always, but in some cases, be more intense and powerful in older video games that made with limited graphics and technological resources. I will never forget the emotion I felt looking at the cover art for Philips Video Pack or Spectrum ZX or the Commodore 64 video games, which had nothing to do with the pixels that appear on the screen. My imagination created a bridge between the artwork and the pixels and filled every limited space and absence with fantastic stories. And yeah, I could see that. That's actually a great way to end that. I feel like this is actually a success story. I actually like this story. Took 22 years to get this man's passion project out. He got it out, and he wants people to check it out. Like I said, I went to the website, and I was looking up the prices of it, and it's not a bad price point. Here, I'll show you guys. Okay, so it's not a bad price point. It's $60, which is the price of a normal game. Now, granted, back in the day, these games they were like $40, but cost of, inflation and everything, it's kind of a bitch. But if you guys want to go help support this guy, Incubate Games, it's definitely an indie game, and go support them. I'll leave the link to this in the comment section. I'll leave a link to the Guardian article down in the comment section. I just thought this was something interesting because, like I said, I didn't think after 22 years something that has been delayed this long would ever come out, and it actually did. Anyways, you guys, don't forget to mash that like button, comment down below, subscribe. Every little bit does help out the channel. And like I said, if you guys want to go check out this game and buy it, I'll leave the link down in the comment section. Y'all take it easy. Have a wonderful day. Bye!